Ready for it?
Oh man, I was born ready for it. So, all right. So, yeah, thanks, Ruben. Appreciate you taking the time this evening to spit some raps with me, man. So, like I said, we'll run through a bit of a check in. Three questions. Who are you? What is it you want to explore here with me today? And why is that topic important or meaningful to you? And then after you've answered, I'll sort of reflect you and I'll respond with my three answers. And then you'll reflect me. And then we'll just sort of settle in for about 60 seconds of silence to just sort of land in the space. And then we'll jump into the exchange.
Cool. Okay.
Righteous.
Okay. Um, yeah, my name is Ruben Klerkx, and I'm a conversation designer. I have my own company, the Creators Company, and I live in Leiden together with my girlfriend Susanna and our two little boys, 2.5 years and 6 years old. And I'm thoroughly passionate about um, self development, or I would rather say self exploration. And the topic that I want to talk about is collective creativity. So, how can we be more creative when we are in groups? I think that's a really important topic to talk about because a lot of people um, are dealing with insecurities about their ideas and
Mm.
finding their voices and how to out those voices. And I think that's a really important topic to address to help people be more creative and especially in groups. So the whole group dynamic that's going on, and how can you change it for the better?
Hmm, hmm, hmm. All right, cool. Okay, so Ruben, if I get you, you're coming into this space as you bring in some really interesting elements, right? The entrepreneurial side of yourself, the family man side of yourself, which I definitely connect to, and the geographicness also, right?
Ah, yeah,
It being in Leiden, right?
yeah.
So I like how this creates this beautiful context to sort of not just who you are, but what kind of soup you find yourself in, right? And you want to explore collective creativity because what I really pick up is this recognition of the challenge that you mentioned insecurities that people have, right? Of of um, of bringing themselves in and expressing their voices when we're in this context of us, right? And how that can be tricky to really, yeah, to to bring in sort of all I've got to offer, right? And here I am already personalizing it, right?
Hmm.
But to bring in what I've got to offer in that context. Did I get you, or did I miss something?
No, I think you really got it. Yeah.
Cool, cool. All right, so I'm Jeremy, right? Seattle by way of Los Angeles here in Amsterdam. And, I find myself connecting in that space, like I said, of partner and father of two, 1.5 about and 4 years old. So I as well have very full hands in this time of lockdownness, right? Um, and this topic of creativity in this collective context, what I think makes it so interesting is, you know, um, creativity is such a rich topic. Um, um, what's your form of art, so to speak? Mine is this whole livingness thing,
Hmm.
um, and especially as you bring in the collective element, right? Um, everything we do is in context, in connection with other people, right? We're social creatures. So this ability to be creative in a vacuum is, it's like being enlightened on the mountaintop. does it matter unless it's happening in co-creation, right? In this context where it's you and me going through the sort of messiness of life together, and definitely plus fiving that. All right, there's some challenges out there for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. All right. So, what did you get from me?
Um, Also, your strong relationship to your family, to your children, um, your environment, and your space where you're in right now as a way to show your creativity. And I'm also wondering from the start of, do you have like this disco bulb turning around in your
Yeah,
room, or
yeah.
what is it?
Yeah, I guess I should address that right quick.
Yeah.
Hold on. Let's see if I can get a little bit more of it. So, as a Christmas ornament, I found this thing at the garden center that projects these
I
stars,
know them. Yeah.
and I don't know, it just brought me so much pleasure and delight that I just decided. My wife cleaned up the Christmas tree and said, "Can we please put that thing away?" I was like, "No, what are you talking about? It's been running 24/7 ever since we bought it, day, night, all times, but it just gives me so much pleasure that I no way, it's too
Oh, but
delightful."
did you place it inside, or is it outside your house and you're projecting it on your
Yeah, so it's
house?
actually it's actually on the balcony, and most of it is on the ceiling of the balcony, but this is just the sort of spillover that enters into the living space.
Nice. Yeah. Yeah, so that was something that I noticed, and also the immediate um connection that you made in creativity on the topic of connecting. So that's something that I really recognize. I think that's part of my definition of creativity. It's like making connections to make things work. So I really like that you mentioned that it's all about connecting with other people, other living species. So that's something else that I really that really triggered me.
Cool, cool. Yeah, yeah. Interesting. All right. Well, that's me. That's you. Let's just take a minute, close your eyes, do your breathing thing, however you like to ground in and center, and then we'll jump in.
Cool.
All right. Yeah. So I've got the sounds of fatherhood happening in the background
Yeah,
here, right?
I hear them. Nice. Is it distracting you, or is it making you feel at home?
Definitely both. Definitely both, right? So this is the modern era, right? How do
Yeah.
we, how do we deal with the fact that we're deeply embedded in local context, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's such an interesting segue, right? Since this is one of the deeper elements that we share in common. We share a few things in common, right? So I know you via the Liberating Structures community here in the Netherlands, but this element of fatherhood and creativity in context, in connection, and how that relates to these little human beings like we're
Mm.
trying to make space for. We're trying, I mean, like literally we created them, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's some collective
Yeah.
creativity.
Yeah, no doubt, no doubt. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
So,
I think actually that was a real defining moment for me. The moment that I became uh, a parent for the first time. That was, well, I don't think it was a defining moment as like a set or fixed moment, but from that moment on, I started to look differently at how I work and how actually also how I live. So everyone says this, and you will probably recognize it that uh, that's that's a life changing moment, of course. But it was also for me the start of looking at my work differently in a way of until that moment it was like two different worlds. Like when
mm,
I work with companies or teams, I was doing my work, and then I came home and I was doing my home thing. But after I got um, my first son, I first realized that why are those two different worlds? Why why am I teaching people stuff that I'm not teaching at home, that I'm not teaching my son?
mm,
So is it even possible to um, teach people stuff or work with people on stuff that you're not willing to teach your children or that is not in your core?
mm,
What
mm,
do you think about that?
mm. Yeah, that's deep, man. Right? So this, when you say this, what that sort of reminds me of is a lot of stories. No, number one, right? Just the way in which the world changes, right? So when I remember when my son was born, I had this really like deep experience. You know, have you ever future present?
Yeah.
The liberating structure, like it was so weird when I experienced that structure the first time, because that so is exactly the experience I had with my son. So first let's explain future present, since we to get out of the jargon, right? Future present is this liberating structure and development where we sit around a campfire, you know, 50 years in the future, after all the problems we're struggling to deal with have been sorted out. And then you know, we talked to the elders that were there, you know, as the problem was sorting itself out, and we asked them, you know, what the world was like and how they made the transition into this unrecognizable future. And I had this distinct impression when my son was born that I was like having this conversation with myself on when I was on the deathbed, sort of looking back at how I raised my son in the person that he became, right? And I remember just like being like overwhelmingly terrified that I would see a reflection in him that I couldn't tolerate about myself, right? And really, really wanting to like embrace those things so that I had a peaceful transition, so to speak. Um, so that story, thank you for you know, triggering that memory.
Yeah.
And this other thing that is really strong, what you bring up, that I can definitely recognize, is this desire that I think that story sort of illustrates, this desire to be a more coherent version of myself, right? To not have this gap between my professional persona and my private persona, but to really make this, you know, to have this one sense of being that I could that I was who I was, and that just expressed itself in whatever the context was.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And how do you or are you dealing with being a coherent person? How do you close that gap?
Mm, yeah, that's an interesting question. I think there's one or two ways to do it, right? I think number one is the probably most widely recognized and aspired to to be, to walk the walk, right? To be who I say I am and say exactly who I am, to make that story as tight and as consistent as it can be. And while I can definitely recognize the aspiration towards that, I have to also recognize that that's just probably not within my grasp. And so I go about it like the complete opposite way, which is to recognize the and acknowledge my inconsistency, right? And to be as sort of transparent about that veranderlijkheid, that mutability,
Ah,
that changing nature as I can, to sort of um, to be as authentic and consistent about the lack of coherence that is, right. It doesn't go about it in that other way, but it makes it instantly available, right?
yeah,
Suddenly, like, because I'm consistent about my inconsistencies, somehow I feel like I'm the most consistent guy on the block. Yeah.
nice. This sounds really appealing.
Yeah, I mean, it works out all right. It's much less work, I think, than trying to tell a narrative, right?
Yeah,
Narrative's super powerful for sure, and everybody loves a good story. Um, but then, my experiences was there's like so much like shame and embarrassment, and in really trying to hide all of the messiness. Like, so literally the pots on my counter are still there from dinner, and hey, that's just what it is.
yeah,
And the more I can just be okay with that and present that as, hey, I've got parts of myself that are just not as clean and polished as I would like to present to the world. Um, I can only imagine, Ruben, that you might recognize a portion of that, although I
yeah,
have no idea where or what those things could be. But hey, if you can be okay with mine, and I can be okay with yours, and we can have this sort of reciprocal opening, to well, literally to create something that's
yeah.
never been, right.
Oh, I love it. Yeah, that makes it really real. That makes you real, and that's a way better version of you to work with than a polished version or a near perfect version, because we all instantly feel that uh, people are not perfect. So if they seem perfect, there's always this
Yeah,
trigger. What is wrong here? What is he
yeah.
hiding? Or yeah, yeah. What is going on here?
Yeah,
So
my bullshit sensor is going off, huh?
yeah, indeed.
Yeah.
Yeah. So showing your whole self, I really like that, and that also at the same time um, reflects um, one of the things that I see in raising children, that you can talk all you want, but in the end, it's what you show. So I really like the saying "show, don't tell,"
Hmm.
or "show it, don't tell it." Like I can say to my son that it's not okay for him to stay on his screens for too long during the day, but it took him only half a year before he said, "But you are also on your phone half the day," and that's such a
Yeah,
painful
yeah,
experience, but so true. And
yeah,
then okay, so I can say what I want, but I just have to put my phone away if I actually want him to be less on his screens. Yeah,
yeah, yeah, for sure, for sure. Yeah, again, so it comes back to the sort of this walking the walk, right?
yeah,
And what's really interesting with that is, um, like that I'm sure, like, to come back to our theme, like, that's a creative endeavor, right? So that is to speak personally, like, that's a version of myself that doesn't just sort of happen on organically on autopilot, right? So I really have to sort of will that into being in a way in which sometimes feels just totally counterintuitive, not nice, that feels heavy, that sometimes is shocking in its effortlessness. But it is this act of really yeah, really creating a version of myself and life that hasn't or isn't yet.
Hmm. And do you think that you can create that version of yourself, or is it showing that version of yourself?
Hmm. Yeah, that I can create. This is an interesting sort of paradox, right?
Yeah.
So if I had a prayer, like in well, not if, like, so my prayer is that I can be a clear and open channel, right? So to live into being whatever it is that sort of wants to express itself through me, right? So for sure, this is a continuously creative unfolding from my perspective, um, and um, it is it's just there's a grace to it, right? So it's not it, yeah, grace, if that makes any sense, right?
Yeah.
It just trying to get out of the way so that it can, what wants to be can be.
Yeah. Nice one. And it was actually something that I heard last week also, that someone said he was also always looking in people, or asking them what is born through them. And I really like that way of looking at people. Like there's something inside of you that has to be created from the inside out. So you are there and you have the responsibility to make room or space for that creativity to come out.
Amen. Amen, for sure. And as soon as you describe this, I find myself going into that collective context, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this element of making space for that thing to come into being, right? And so that's got a lot of different facets, I noticed, right? So how do I do that? How do I make space for my own expression? And how do I empower others by creating space for their expressions at the same time?
Yeah. 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 The first thing that pops up in my mind is that you first have to get rid of your biggest enemies to create that space.
Mm,
And I think one of the biggest enemies is your your ego, that can get in the way of so much beautiful things.
mm,
So if you're busy with how will people see me, or how do I want to come across, or what will people say about my messy kitchen, then you will not be busy with that actual creating
mm,
part of you. Um, so moving that aside, I think that's a real powerful way, a real vulnerable way at the same time, to also show the people around you that that's okay.
mm,
Um, and again, that's show, don't tell. You can only show it, and other people will do it as well. Um, and the second thing that I also see really often is people. I don't know the English word for this. Uh, they're actually um, unifying their IDs with their identities.
mm,
Um, so they think, if I have a good ID, I am a good person, or I am a better person. And
mm,
at the same time, if someone has critique on my ID, they have a critique on me as a person. But then again, that's your ego talking, thinking, hey, this person doesn't think I'm okay. And that voice can be so getting in your way. Like I had this moments in my life, like for real long periods where I couldn't have a real conversation because every moment, every second of the conversation, I was stepping outside that conversation, stepping in my little helicopter and flying over our conversation. And I wasn't looking at you as my conversation partner. I was looking at myself and being really
Yeah.
critical on what I was saying. Oh, what are you saying? You are mumbling. Why did you start this sentence? And so that that was actually my ego in that helicopter getting in the way of really connecting to you.
Mm,
uh,
mm,
and
mm,
and and it took me like I think 4 or 5 years before I learned to stop that and be in the moment and in the zone.
mm. Yeah, yeah, and that's this so triggers in me like this visceral memory of like flow state, right? Of the 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 blessing that is to have that to miss that sense of self actually and just be absorbed in the doing or in the being, right, of whatever it is, right? So the story that that triggers in me is this, like juggling a football, right? Soccer ball for my
Mm-hmm.
American brethren, right? So, right, in trying. I'm not a soccer player. I'm not a football player, but of course I was been a kid and I've played with the ball. And, you try and get this long string of like, how long can I keep it going? How long can I keep it going? And I remember like this euphoric excitement of like, oh yeah, I'm really getting it. I'm really getting it, and like this desire to sort of claim it, right? And what you mentioned, that ego, that psychological self that wants to say, aha, I am doing something special and unique here. And as soon as I would make this graspingness to claim it, I would lose the sense of flow, right?
Yeah.
As soon as I wanted to affix it and to link it with my sense of value and identity, I would lose at least 1% of my capacity to be present and pay attention to what I was actually doing. And, just that, whatever that diminished capacity, just lost the ability to sort of stay in the moment and on that sort of knife's edge. Right?
Yeah.
And that's what
Yeah.
I recognize as well when you describe this helicopter view, right? That I'm burning some of my creative capacity in this critique
Yeah.
of myself, in the observation. Whereas if I can sort of come back down, right, and just get into baseline reality with you, and just let whatever will be. All right, it's probably much less polished than I would aspire to, but you know what? All of the capacity that I've got to give is at least present and available to us. And
Yeah.
on that basis, yeah, then I just have to trust that good shit is possible and it'll work itself out, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Good one. Yeah. Yeah. And the story about soccer also raises some questions, like if you are able to place this new record of for example, if I would get like 30 times, that is high for me. But
Okay.
I don't know how you were in soccer. What was your high score in
Probably like six. All right.
6? Okay, so
Yeah, yeah,
phew,
yeah,
my ego is
yeah. Exactly.
easy again.
Yeah.
No, um, but then you have like this record in this fixed situation. That's you on your own in
Hmm.
your own environment. Um, but that doesn't says anything on how you would act or react in real life, and like when you would be on the soccer field. Do you know like I don't know if you are like a soccer fan. Are you?
No, afraid
Oh
not.
no,
But sports
then
analogies are fine.
yeah. No, well, it's this story. I think it was one of the brothers, the Boer.
Okay.
Ronald and Frank de Boer, who actually did in this soccer match, like they were keeping that ball in the air while running half the field from one side to uh, the other side, and like I so vividly remember that moment because what they actually did was they placed this situation that you normally would do in your own while making fun with the ball in
Mm-hmm.
this serious situation in a actual soccer match where the stakes were really high. And like I also vividly remember it because the reactions were so diverse. Like the sports commentator was like, "Wow, this is amazing! He's doing this in a soccer match, and well, one, two, three, four, five, six, seven." Uh, but there were also other people who were like saying, "No, this is so degrading. You cannot do this. This is you humiliating for the other party." And like, but the but the whole part of placing this moment in a situation where people are not familiar with it, I think that's like taking it up so many levels.
Yeah, yeah, that's application, like, and almost it's weird to say, but it's also exaptation, right?
Yeah,
To take the thing that we did in one context and just zoom it out in in somehow even a more ideal place. Right?
yeah, yeah.
Mhm. But yeah, how does what we do in practice sort of translate to the to the playing field of real life, right? When the stakes are high, like you mentioned, right? And when we've got opposition, right?
Yeah.
When games are sport is an interesting metaphor and
Hmm.
analogy because it's so simple, right? It's such a finite game compared to the big infinite game of life when all of the rules are question
Yeah.
mark, right? And
I think this is actually a really interesting example, especially in the Netherlands, because we have like this history of um, like two sides of a story in a soccer match. Um, we on the one hand want to play this beautiful soccer play like invented by Johan Cruyff, and we want to play oogstrelend football, eye stroking soccer. I don't know if that's a real English word, um, but on the other hand, we almost never win anything with this way of playing, and like we're constantly moving up and down in this feeling of we should play our genuine Dutch way of soccer, and the other times we say no, no, we have to book results, and I think that's how it goes in real life, in real work, also like we're we're constantly balancing on, yeah, we have to get results, or we have to have fun in our work, but I actually believe that we can play eye stroking soccer and get results,
yeah.
but you have to have a team that is fully committed to playing, is serious about play, is serious about practicing and taking that practice
Mm, mm,
into reality. If you,
for sure.
if there's only one person that doesn't believe it, the whole system falls apart,
Mm,
I think.
mm, no, absolutely. So I don't know much about this form of soccer, but what I can absolutely speak to is the experience of, right, that it only makes sense for me to be as vulnerable or as open, to put my interest aside to the extent that the person who does it the least, right? So if we all agree to be open and vulnerable and to look at the larger goal, then we can all do that. But as soon as somebody goes, yeah, but I'm just going to look at the larger goal a little, just a hair less, then somebody else is going to look at them and go, well, I'm gonna be a hair less closed too.
Yeah.
And then before you know it, we're on this race of, oh no, they're shrinking. Their openness is shrinking. Their vulnerability is shrinking. Like, oh dear, oh dear, oh dear. Right.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I'll get hurt and I'll be made the fool, so to speak.
Yeah. Do you think? First of all, how old are your children?
So my daughter's pushing a year and a half here, and my son just turned 4.
For in what kind of work environment will will they arrive? Do you think?
Oh yeah, that is such an interesting and depressing question, right? Uh,
Why is it depressing?
Now, well, no, in all likelihood, dramatically different than it's even possible to predict right now,
Mm-hmm.
right? It probably bears so little resemblance to the world of work that we inhabit and experience that almost next to nothing that is normal now will be applicable to them. So on one hand, there's great, thank God, and so I think that that concern, I'll have to live with the transition, so to speak. Uh, they'll just be into whatever is becoming, so to speak. Um, but to answer the question, what does it look like? So my hypothesis is sort of based around how do I explain this without going too much into my wonkish theoretical views and predictions of the future, right?
No, go there.
Yeah, go there. Awesome. So one of the dudes I really am sort of intellectually falling in love with is Jordan Hall, who has this whole situational assessment and this whole philosophy about game B. And part of game B, so the nutshell version is game A is what we would consider rivalrous systems. So systems of competition,
Mm-hmm.
whereas game B are anti-rivalrous. So you could imagine what actual cooperation and collaboration at a global scale would look like. So instead of my company working to win market share from your company, we're all working towards a larger goal of some vision of the future, so to speak. Um, and in that game B anti-rivalrous way, what I think the world he will end up working in is going to look like a lot of flexibility in switching teams, right? So you can imagine if we're all on the same team, then yeah, maybe there is a case to be made for the sort of classical, traditional, stable team, right? The group of people I work with, and we work together, and all of this different stuff. Um, and what my suspicion sort of leads me to is that it'll probably be much more sort of spontaneous crewing. That we'll work together for a while because we
Mm-hmm.
click together and we vibe. And, as soon as the thing that we're working on is sort of done, then we're each individually going to look around ourselves and go, oh, okay, this is the next thing to sort of be worked on. And in this new context, that there will be a new constellation of people that sort of come together and go, oh, okay, cool. So how are we going to work together on this thing? So I think it's going to make what we would sort of consider agile or self-management, self-organization, autopoiesis, to put a real super technical term on it. It's going to make what we consider top of the line to be real child's play. It's probably going to come so natural and effortless and be
Mm-hmm.
required of him.
Awesome.
Hmm. Yeah.
So game B.
Yeah, Game B. Check it out.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
will.
yeah, it's good stuff.
Interesting. And the first thing that popped in to my mind was like we now play I think they call it a zero sum game.
Hmm.
Like we are in this rivalry. We can only have our wealth um, when someone else has less. Like it's always this balance. So I don't think I can predict the future or can say anything about it that's re- remotely getting into the direction that we're probably heading. But then I would say, well, my wishful thinking
Hmm.
will be that when my children get into a working environment, that we live more in a world of abundancy, where we see that there is a lot, there's enough,
Hmm.
um, and and if we stop seeing it as okay, I have to gain as much as possible without considering that if you gain too much, someone else will have too little.
Hmm.
Then then I think that will definitely change also their way of working. Like the base income, I think that's an example of living from a abundant mindset, um, and the constantly growing group of self-employed people who are not willing to work their ass off for someone else's profit anymore. I think that's going to be something else that's going to change. I actually think that, like, although I really like agile and Scrum, there are also ways to deal with a reality that is current now.
Hmm.
But I think maybe a little bit hope that it won't be necessary anymore because we stop having these enormous organizations, like
Hmm.
organizations with 100,000 employees. Yeah, I it's not manageable.
Right.
So maybe we should stop try to manage it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can definitely get behind that, right? And and so if I so what I've been really obsessed with lately is complexity science, right?
Yeah.
So right, so this idea of well as well of look, if we can really ground ourselves in the messiness that is reality, right?
Hmm.
That genuine complexity that it sort of reveals that the emperor sort of has no clothes, and that all of this structure and all of this organization that we try and to apply to things is in somewhat running away from is based on the fear of that messiness, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
So it like here I am in Amsterdam, like you can see all over the Netherlands that like nature not so much, right? You go to the forest and even the trees are lined up really well organized, right? So the messiness of reality, human beings have a tendency of just sort of squishing that to 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 plot. I mean, it's a
Yeah.
little flatter here in the Netherlands, but you get it, right?
Yeah.
To just squishing the baseline messiness of reality and then structuring the context that makes sense for us. Whereas if we can flip that script and just come to grips with the underlying complexity and sort of be comfortable in that, then we can open up this space where we can be much more natural, and less rigidly structured, but much more adaptive to
Hmm.
whatever sort of arises and pops up.
Yeah.
And so the question that emerges for me, though, is if we're thinking about this world in which of abundance, of genuine collaboration, of of smaller scale operation, right? So how do we live into that sort of right now, right?
Mm.
How do we manifest that and sort of establish the way for them to just how do we create that space in the here and now that we expect them or we'd like them to live into?
For me personally, what I try to do is um, show them where they have influence and where they don't. Um, like if you are aware of the systems that you are in, you're also m- more able to make change in that system or in your environment, or come to the conclusion, well, this is an environment where I can do what I want, but I won't change it. And then it's also okay. So in a smaller scale, for example, it can be like when my oldest son has has his birthday party and his friends come over. um, then he invites them in his home, and um, he has this view of how he wants it to be, but he has like 2 months of dreaming of my birthday is going to be like this, but
Right.
his birthday never turns out to be as he um, imagined. And when he starts trying to control all the efforts of his little friends.
It's like,
Y-
that doesn't go there, that goes
no,
here. Yeah,
indeed,
yeah,
indeed.
yeah,
No,
yeah.
no, no. You should sit here and you should wait until I do that. And that's not working. So then I try to teach or show him that it's fine if things go differently, and the only thing that he can do um is have fun, or um, see what he can do according to his plans or his dreams. But he cannot control the
Mm,
others. Or if he's upset about it, he can actually influence others by showing his feelings and
mm,
telling what is bothering him. So teaching and showing them to express your feelings in a way that is constructive and helpful. I think that's the smallest thing that I can do.
word, word. Human stuff. Yeah.
Yeah,
Real human stuff for sure.
yeah. But
Yeah.
that's also something that I find it so interesting. How is it possible that in all of the companies where I come, it's like, okay, there are like two topics if we talk about humans interacting with each other. The first is everyone is looking for a safe space. We want to build a safe environment where everyone can be himself or herself, and where we can experiment and play around. And the second thing is, yeah, we don't communicate that well. We want to have better communication. People are not expressing what they think.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then
Feedback.
if we come back to the beginning of our conversation, then that is the moment where I then realize, okay, if you take like 20 years or 30 years back, or forward, as you wish, um, what should you learn your children to create another environment where there is indeed a safe space and where people do express their feelings? And if you look at it this way, then it's really confronting if you say to your children stuff like act normal, or um, go to your room if you want to yell. It's like, shouldn't
Yeah.
I be creating this safe space here and learn him, oh, you are upset, what is going on, how can we help, are you aware that if you start screaming, other people might get bothered, but don't push that feeling away, and
Yeah,
that's sometimes what we are doing, and then thus also um, creating those situations that you 20 years later wish to de- demolish. Yeah,
yeah, yeah, yeah. We want to manage these things out of existence, right?
yeah,
So yeah, right. So that's the for me the you're pointing at the paradigm of right. We want to be free from versus free with, right?
yeah,
I want to be free from insecurity. I want to be free from anger. I want to be free from sadness. Right, free from all of the uncomfortable things. Just how do we manage those? So how do we manage the situation so no one's ever angry again? And which is like the total polar opposite from a safe space, right? Because then we already are creating the dividing line of these things are acceptable and those parts of life are not acceptable. And who in God's name can actually feel safe when there's so much of life that is not welcome in these contexts,
yeah,
right? Yeah, yeah, yeah. So how do we manage all of that stuff out of here, right? Versus how do we manage with it, right?
yeah.
How do we hang into that space? Mm, 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 mm.
I like the saying, trying to get comfortable with the uncomfortable. I think that's a real important thing to learn, and
Hmm.
also to learn your children. Like, it's okay to feel this way, or to um, um, I don't know what the word. If you don't know what to do right now, and you're walking with your soul under your arms.
Soul under your arm. Yeah, yeah. So there's normalization for sure,
Yeah,
right? Of normalizing that this is part and parcel of the human experience, and that that's just okay, right?
yeah.
Yeah,
That's also what I like about liberating structures, because I think that's a way to create that environment, or a way to learn more about other people, and to um, letting those feelings be there, and letting people be heard.
yeah, for sure. If we
Uh,
were to come back to this original question, how do we make space for others? There
yeah,
are exceptional ways to make space for other people and all the
yeah,
messiness that they have. And mm, yeah, so I'm on a tweesprong. I'm at an intersection, right? So let me see if I can mash these things up together. All right, because I'm really interested to go into more the into liberating structures and making space for others, and at the same time, there's a interesting vein of creativity that I notice comes up when you describe, the 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 birthday party not living up to my fantasy, right? And another interesting question for me that comes up is, all right, so what do I want to do now, right? So in the space of my perhaps my disappointment, my frustration, in real contact with the actual reality, what is it that I want to do? What is it that wants to again sort of express itself through me? What's there? Um, so I don't know. Maybe can we find a way to synthesize these things, or is there enough to be said and move on? What do you think?
the last question sparked the most interest in me. I'm curious about what you think about that,
All right.
because it's about this way of self-expression.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah, maybe we can connect it to liberating structures as well.
Yeah. So I think so. The overlaps, the similarity, the overlap to me between these two things is is this idea of where do we want to go?
Yeah,
So what do I, whether it's for me as an individual or for us as a group, like what's our vector? Maybe not so much the clearly articulated goal, but what direction? where is it we're headed? And um, and to really express and answer that question, I have to have a really good contact with baseline nowness, right? The To put it in another frame, um, my map has to be accurate to where I actually am. Right? If I think I'm in some other place because I'm
Mm.
bullshitting myself on the map of my reality, right? But it turns out I'm not there. I'm actually over here near the anus of reality that I'd never like to be. But I'm going to tell myself a story that I'm actually right here. It's definitely going to jeopardize my ability to get to destination over
Mm-hmm.
here, right? So contact with reality, I think, is really important. And
And
those are
how do you keep that contact with reality?
yeah. Mm-mm-mm. So for me, it always comes down to making space for what is, right? Trying to, as much as I can, make space for whatever it is. So this is that to me is an interesting and relevant segue into liberating structures because they have this tendency of being really, really good practices and ways of making space for whatever is actually going on, creating guiding the conversation, facilitating, hosting, whatever you want to call it, right? But framing the conversation to happen so that we can make space for all of the plurality of different perspectives and information and ideas and insights. We can get all of that stuff sort of above the waterline, so to speak,
Mm.
and then we can figure out where to go from there or how we're going to get to whatever our vector is.
Yeah.
So I have a totally tangential question, which is how do you explain liberating structures to people? Like,
Actually, I don't.
great answer. Full
I
stop.
stopped. I stopped doing that because it felt so uncomfortable, and I was not comfortable with that uncomfortability.
Yeah.
Uh, no, it is. I think you have to experience it, and then I can say, this is a liberating structure, and um, uh, almost all the time people really thoroughly enjoy it, and then I can say, well, this is only a fraction of
Yeah.
what it is or can be.
Right. Would you
So,
like to know more?
would you like to know more?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And you?
I got nothing. So I hosted a new user group meetup, a new to me user group meetup just last week,
Oh, nice.
and and somebody said, "Hey, do you want to talk about?" I was doing the introduction. They said, "Hey, do you want to talk about? Give some background or some explanation of what liberating structures are?" And I said, "No, not at all." Right? I can say lots of words. I can speak to your cognition. Right? I can speak to put concepts in your brain, and then maybe you'll be able to decode them well enough to get some semblance of what I'm talking about. Or we can just jump right into them and then they will experience them and see. Right. And then brilliantly, she said, "Yeah, well, could you just say that?" I go, "Oh, yeah, definitely." Yeah,
Oh,
yeah. Just,
cool. But is it different than other theories or concepts? Why is it that we think that other concept has to be explained first before experiencing them?
hmm,
Or
great.
how well designed is a method if it takes that much explanation to see how it works or
Right.
if it works?
No doubt. Like even uh, I was talking to Barry the other day, and he said, yeah, we've noticed when hosting conversation cafes that you got to watch out to not spend as much time explaining the conversation cafe as you spend in the conversation cafe. I was like, oh yeah, okay, quickly. Yeah, what makes it different? Yeah, I think what makes liberating structures different is because the experience of them is so accessible, right? Um, like if you were to take a larger framework or a methodology, right, to to you kind of have to explain the whole concept to gets enough buy-in for somebody to
Mm.
put themselves through the whole thing. Whereas with a liberating structure, like all it takes is like the smallest amount of information to get started, and then you're already in there, right?
Yeah.
Like the ratio of practical experience to explanation actually favors practical experience
Mm-hmm.
versus something like Scrum or some scaled agile framework. The practical experience is so monolithic and huge that the explanation is just this tiny sliver in comparison that and then I get into this sort of Cartesian dualism, right? The map is not the territory. So the explanation that I've given you is not the actual experience of the framework versus, the experience that I can give you of the structure is superior than the explanation that I can give you.
Do you think it's possible to run an organization of any growth on liberating structures? Like, if that is your main method instead of all those other frameworks or
I think so for sure.
yeah,
Right. I think there's enough diversity. I mean, there's the possibilities are endless, right? There's 26 letters in the English alphabet. There's 33, official liberating structures that play so nice with anything else you want to toss at them. Absolutely. Like if you had a basis of, all right, our onboarding to welcome you into the company is a 2-day immersion workshop, and you'll pick up everything on the fly. We just debrief after everything to make sure that anybody who's not experienced this method is now familiar with it and can put it in their arsenal and requires less explanation. For sure. I
yeah,
would definitely be excited to try that. I tried it the last place I was at.
yeah, really,
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, you gave the training, right?
yeah,
Yeah. So before I knew it, I had like a dozen, 15 people from PQ in
yeah.
the online immersion workshop, which turned into a community of practice that I'm not there anymore, but knock on wood, is
Are
still
they
still
still
active.
practicing it?
I know for sure that there were a couple people, the one person in HR as well as the sort of head of development, took to them like fish in water, right? So
Oh, nice.
yeah, which is awesome, right? To see that sort of to see the developing practice of other people, right? It definitely put me in a weird place, but yeah,
Why
for
is that?
sure. Um, because it changed my relationship with the context. So maybe to tell a little bit of the story. So I showed up at this company, and as a scrum master and relying heavily as a practitioner of liberating structures, I basically ran a bunch of workshops that, of course, were way better communication than any of the other meetings than anybody else was having. And on the basis of that, I turned into a sort of one-man bottleneck because people would then invite me, hey, we want to do a session about this. Can you come facilitate us? Which was super awesome, right? It was super awesome to just be like, oh yes,
Yeah,
I'd love to help.
ego. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I'm doing good things. People are asking me for help, right? And then as I started shifting into more of a mentorship role, and people were taking care of those help requests themselves, then it became much less about my ability to put together a string and host it, and much more about my ability to brainstorm with people and enable them to put together a string and host it. So that's why I said it made things a little weird for me, because I had
Yeah.
to start learning at a much different in a much different skill set, so to speak.
Yeah. Weird and awesome at the same time.
Yeah, totally, totally. No, and as I recognized and as I experienced that, it definitely was. Oh yeah, no, for sure. If I can, I absolutely want to get into a place where I am predominantly teaching other people how to do these things for exactly the reason that you mentioned. Because if I can turn this into a shared body of knowledge, um, well, it's like showing up for one of the open spaces in the liberating structures community here in the Netherlands, right?
Hmm.
That way in which you we would sort of, hey, I want to jump into this open space session, and then we'd organize around that topic, and then we'd have like a 5 minute conversation about which structures do we want to use to explore
Yeah.
this topic. And you just go, oh wow, this is powerful, right? To be able to use that as a shared language between
Yeah.
us, and to come to some decision. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, that's also what I really like about it. It's if you get to that point that you have like this shared new language. Oh, that's so powerful.
Mm, mm, no doubt. And that just makes, right, and if we want to come back to this idea of creativity, right,
Hmm.
it's enabling, like, everybody in the room to be a designer of the interaction, which just does something so powerful to, if we just want to talk about intentionality, we're
Hmm.
now intending uh, a, a way in which to have a conversation. Just automatically, as soon as you're engaging in that, you have a totally different perspective on the content that you're discussing, right? And so that all by itself is like worth its solid weight in gold, right? To just have everybody in the room thinking about how we're gonna explore this content is great.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's so powerful when people feel their autonomy growing, when they experience that they can influence the next steps of their
Mm.
process or their conversation, and also the content of that steps. Like we're normally constantly focusing on how can I make my point, but then you also see that it's also possible to change the process or the way you communicate, and on a deeper level you then change your content as well. So I think that's a really powerful experience. And if you take a look at creativity, that is that's also what I seek in collaboration. Can you empower people to share their genuine ideas, even those ideas that they're still doubting about, or that they're not certain enough about? If they can share those ideas and other people can step in and help build out those ideas, that's like really powerful. And but then you also have to be willing to admit that once the idea is out, it's not yours
Oh yeah.
anymore. It's it's ours, and yeah, who picks it up and will proceed on it is totally uncertain. But we tend to keep those ideas for us, ourselves. I, I had it the other day. There was this guy in one of my workshops, and at the end, he stayed a little longer. And there are always some people after a workshop that wants to stay a bit longer because they want to share something extra that they didn't. And he said something like, "Yeah, I have this really great idea, but I'm not sure if I can share it yet because I didn't make sure that I can protect the ID." And he was so in that zero sum game
Mm,
that his ID wasn't evolving. And when
yeah.
people just share it and uh, dare to uh, throw it out, then it gets propelled and it can get so much further, and then you spark creativity, I think.
Yeah. So as you're describing this, like there's this sensation of like electricity, like of like tingling in the back of my head, right? This sensation of aliveness when I can voice the thing that's kind of on the edge, right? Like in this exchange, when I can bring in this thing, I go, I'm not quite sure about it, but I'm going to put it out there, and because I put it out there, you can help me out
Mm.
in orienting and maybe shifting and looking at it in a different way, and then it just takes off, right? And then it sort of has its life, like you said, it has a life of its own, right?
Yeah.
It now exists in the shared space between us, and the right. So it's funny, right? On one hand, I want to let go of that's my idea, and on the other hand, there's there's just this sense of awe that comes from sort of midwifing an idea, right? Of sort
Mhm.
of bringing it into that shared context, and watching it sort of just take on and grow, take off and grow, and yeah, right. And here's the parental reference, and leaving
Yeah,
me
I was.
behind, right?
Yeah,
Here I am, go, oh, wait a minute, that was my idea. It doesn't matter. The idea is bigger than you now,
yeah,
Jeremy. Like, like shut up. You're, you know, let it be free. Right?
yeah. If you um, finish the metaphor of parenting, it's like uh, when when you bring this child to the world and you try to keep it in your house for the first 3 4 years because it's not ready enough to go out there. No, you gave birth to this little human being, and now it's not yours anymore. Yeah, you have the responsibility to protect it, like for the first 18 years, but uh the rest, it's now an ID or a human being on itself.
Right, exactly. Let it go, right?
Yeah,
Give it to the world, right? So I've loved it
yeah,
into being,
yeah,
and given it the ability to spread its wings and fly, right?
yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah. And get influenced by this world we live in and this environment where where it where it lives. Yeah,
yeah, yeah. It's terrifying. Yeah, and so exciting at the same time
yeah, yeah. But
to
it's also funny if you say like terrifying, and at the same time, how easy do you bring your children to a school where they are like 6 hours a day in under the influence of other children that you don't know. You don't know how those children are raised, or you don't know where your teacher comes from, or what his or her background is. And
yeah.
we just do that. It's like that's
I mean,
crazy.
I literally my son has turned 4 just a couple weeks ago, so he has yet to actually go to school. So I haven't gone there yet. And it's funny though, but as you describe that, the thing that comes up for me is like, oh yeah, like they got, I'm I'm not worried about him. I'm worried about them. Like they're like, they better watch out, man. They better watch out.
Oh, you are so happy that you don't have to do that alone anymore. Now someone else can also experience that.
Yeah, yeah. It's just, yeah. I mean, so I've done, to maybe to pat myself on the back, but I've done the best I can at, like I said, sort of loving him into being and creating this this thing that has a lot of might and a lot of will to it. And you know, on one hand, like I said, I I'm reticent about putting him in the system, right, to
Mm-hmm.
be sort of socialized. And on the other hand, I go, man, good luck. Like you think you can socialize this wild creature? I've done everything I can to give him the opportunity to experience his own agency and autonomy. And
Mm-hmm.
for sure, if they can polish some edges off, great. But I think the structure that's in there is gonna do just fine. No, no,
Awesome.
yeah,
I love it how we brought it back to parenting again.
yeah, yeah.
Like
That's it.
saying that ideas and creativity equals our children.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Can I bring them into the being in a way that allows them to flourish and be greater than, yeah, really greater than me, right?
Yeah. Well, if you further explore that metaphor, do you know the IKEA effect? Like it's when someone um, created or co-created something, he's more likely to value the product higher than someone else who didn't collaborate on it.
Yeah.
Can you also translate it to your children? If you have a look at, like, if there are more people involved and committed to helping them grow up, are they also more um, uh, or will they I, will they see them as better persons
Hmm.
if they were part of the um, uh, of raising them?
Yeah. I could absolutely see that being the case, right? Because the people that the people who I interact with and who I've invested my time and energy, are by definition, I like them more. So,
Yeah,
sorry for everybody I haven't met yet, but I I'm prioritizing the people that I have had meaningful exchanges with. Right?
yeah. So shouldn't we then try to bring our children with as much as possible people in contact? Mm.
For sure. So if you think about oral traditions, indigenous cultures, right? This notion of it takes a village to raise a child,
Yeah,
right? Child rearing was a community effort, right?
yeah,
And they had a lot of interactions with the people, in extended relationships with them, and each one of those people would sort of hold the boundaries of the individual self and identity together with everybody else in the community. And it was through community that we would know ourselves, and each other, right?
yeah,
So for sure there's yeah, so not only on the to take the flip side of that, not only to help bring my child into as many meaningful relationships as possible, but can I have meaningful relationships with as many children as possible at the
mm,
same
yeah.
time, right?
Oh, nice one,
So
good one.
so can I take so I can I be uh, a foundational relationship with the children in his context, as well, so that we can that I can help raise them together, right?
Yeah,
That we can all be yeah, so that we can all have meaningful relationships together. Yeah.
yeah, wonderful idea.
Boom.
That's my agenda saying
Get the fuck out
I
of
have
here.
to go.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
Is
I don't know, Ruben. I swear we've had gone through like three really good places where I wanted to go. All right, cut. It's not going to get any better than that. So, yeah, yeah,
oh, nice to hear. Great.
yeah.
Yeah, I
Thanks.
really, really loved the conversation. Really
Yeah,
nice.
Good spitting raps with you.
Yeah.
Well, to get you on the way out the door, if people want to track you down and find out what you're up to, you want to tell us something you're working on, give them a pitch and tell them how they can get in touch with you.
Yeah, they should definitely go to thecreatorscompany.com. Um, Most of our website is in Dutch. Um, we have like this real nice self disco program, like all about self discovery, and a really nice creators community. So if you want to invest in that safe space and better communication, then you should definitely join the creators community. Yeah, it's Dutch, but if you want something in English, from May 31st until June 4th, we will organize another immersion workshop, liberating structures, together with Ewan Leborn and Nadia van Holt. So
Cool, cool.
it's also really nice. It's going to be on the website, I think, from next week. So
Awesome, awesome.
yeah,
I went with 15 of my closest colleagues, and good things happened.
yeah.
I don't know if I can give a stronger endorsement, man.
Join
Awesome.
us,
Yeah, cool,
like
cool. Yeah, I'd
like
be happy
Jeremy
to.
did. Yeah,
Yeah. Awesome, Ruben. Well, thanks very much for your time, attention, and energy. And yeah, I'll upload this thing and
yeah.
we can see what's happening.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
Yeah, it was good spitting raps with you, man. Um, yeah. A frame. I ask people to share a frame. So to put in a comment with a timestamp of any moment that they had a particular thought,
Ah,
or that they had a physical sensation or felt something, right? To timestamp it and speak on what their experience was.
oh,
Uh,
nice.
yeah, yeah,
What a nice idea.
yeah. I mean, we'll see if somebody ever does it, but I'm going to keep inviting them to do so.
Yeah, I'm curious about it. Yeah, we'll definitely look forward to those timestamps.
All right, man. Well, have a good evening. I'll
Yeah,
let you
you
know when
too.
this gets uploaded, huh?
Cool. Thank you, man. Have a nice evening.
Be good to yourself. Well, there you have it. Another episode in the books. Gushes.